Harry and Meghan over Endgame is utterly real. They gave Omid Scobie a platform, and as it turns out, his own selfish desires for fame and fortune have been disastrous for Harry and Meghan because
he's used them as a springboard
to pursue his own desires in many ways. And unfortunately, for Harry and Meghan at least, it's ended up turning on them. Yes, he was very, very useful in the beginning. He helped them with finding freedom, and he got their narrative out there, and they seem to go to him time and time again for exclusives. But at the end of the day, it turns out that Omid Scobie is really in it not for Harry and Meghan and their epic love story. He is in it for himself, and he's in it to enrich his own bank account. And if it happens to come at the expense of Harry and Meghan, why, all the better in some ways. Because we had the reveal, interestingly, within the Dutch edition only, of who the alleged royal racist is. And what this tells us is quite fascinating, because despite Omid Scobie's proclamations and Harry and Meghan's proclamations that no, they don't communicate, they don't help each other, that, Meghan wasn't interviewed for Endgame, not at all. But how did he allegedly know? How did he allegedly know this very personal detail that would not be revealed on the royal side, but of course would be revealed by Harry and Meghan? And this proves, I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, that not only is Meghan Markle and Prince Harry helping Omid, they're giving him very, very personal details that I don't think the royal family would appreciate in the slightest. And so any chance they had of maybe melting some of the freeze between them, I think, is officially dead at this point. In fact, the ocean has refrozen. And this is huge, and not probably what Harry and Meghan were anticipating, or perhaps even Omid Scobie as well. But at the end of the day, does he care unless he can enrich himself? That is the key question here, and something we are going to go into today. But before we get started, if you would like to hit that subscribe button, I would so appreciate it. I offer compelling royal commentary here. My name is Brittany, and we have a lot of fun dissecting all this craziness, because this really Harry and Meghan thing has been an absolute car crash. And it's that thing where everybody, you see the crash and you're just curious. You want to see it, so you drive slowly by because you're just wanting to see what happened. And that is Harry and Meghan, and that is their appeal. And I don't think they're going to get away from that anytime soon. And their proclamations, of course, that they don't want the drama, they're okay now with not getting an apology or anything like that, is, I think, complete BS. And I don't think Omid Scobie, even though I'm sure he got a lot of his information from Harry and Meghan, at the end of the day, really did them any favors at all. It's unbelievable. So let's get into it. So how did we get to this situation? Well, let's start with Meghan Markle, I think, choosing a reporter that she thought not only would be sympathetic, but one she could mold and help pursue her own agenda within the royal family. And that happened to be Omid Scobie, who has peripheral friends with Meghan, not just friends. So I think they know a lot of people in common. And I think she found qualities in him that she liked and reflected herself, because that's who Meghan is generally friends with. People who are like her, they're attention seekers, they're narcissists, because they all need to pat each other on the back. So she needs to find somebody who was like that, somebody who was probably not the best journalist in the world, but would be totally willing to be her mouthpiece in particular situations. And Omid Scobie just happened to be that guy, because he was particularly ambitious in certain ways and was absolutely willing to do whatever Harry and Meghan said. So they somehow got connected, and he started getting all these exclusives, and he ended up writing Finding Freedom with Carolyn Durant, which I think came out like right before Mexit, if I remember correctly. It came out, I believe, in about 2019, and it included such details that nobody should possibly know except for the person involved. Like Meghan Markle during their safari in Africa, that she found a bush to relieve herself in. And I don't think nobody should know that. They tried to spin it as she's so rugged, she's so outdoorsy, that she doesn't mind going in a bush. Although, has she ever done that again? Of course she hasn't. And nobody should know that, but Harry and Meghan, maybe their guide, those are the only people who should know that. So clearly this little detail came from Meghan Markle. And when this book came out, he has really been able to use this as a springboard to pursue his own agenda. He's been a contributor for GMA, he has written for Harper's Bazaar and other publications, and most notably, for a very, very brief period of time, I think even less than a year, he was like the executive royal editor for Yahoo News. But here came the problem. He became close with Meghan Markle, clearly was their cheerleader, and then Harry and Meghan decided to drop Mexit on the world. And Omid Scobie was caught in a little bit of a tough spot here because he happened to carve this little bit of the royal role for himself. So does he abandon Harry and Meghan to pursue his own thing, or does he go ahead and continue on the Harry and Meghan track? And obviously we all know what he did. He decided to continue pushing Harry and Meghan's agenda, and this was again somewhat lucrative for him. But as things continue to deteriorate between the royals and Harry and Meghan, this guy who was lucky enough to go on maybe a couple of royal tours, he wasn't part of the official royal rota, but he was part of the royal journalists that were allowed to attend some of the foreign events, all of a sudden, those opportunities started to really dwindle for him. He went from having this huge access to having very, very little. And he put, like, even the Meghan's Mirror people put all his eggs in the Meghan Markle basket. And then, of course, she proceeds to somewhat burn him, but he's still schlepping for her. He's still flying the Harry and Meghan banner. But with the loss of the Yahoo job, he had that between, it looks like the end of 2022 and the early 2023, because his last article for Yahoo was in March 2023, and then he started that, I think, in the summer or spring of 2022. All of a sudden, some of his prospects were beginning to dry up. Because when you look at the Yahoo situation, I'm sure they hired him with the intention that they would get him some awesome royal access and maybe some exclusives and those sorts of things. That's why you hire somebody like him as your executive royal editor when you really don't even have a royal department. But what happened? Well, they parted ways, and he didn't let anybody know this for months. I actually want to say I sort of broke this story because I was looking through Yahoo and realizing, because I kept up with Omid to see what he was doing, and then all of a sudden I realized he's not posting any articles on Yahoo anymore. In fact, the guy is hardly posting any articles at all that he's written. And I'm like, wait, did Omid leave Yahoo? And somebody's like, well, yeah, he did. And I was like, oh. And then about a day or two later, all of a sudden it came out, yes, I left Yahoo News. But it was very vague in his things. He just said, well, we decided to mutually part ways. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like a particularly good exit. And especially since he didn't mention any of it on his social media. He said, in fact, well, I'm working on a book. And that happened to be Endgame. Basically how the monarchy is dying, and it's all because they didn't love Harry and Meghan. But as things have come out, as details have come out, it's become abundantly clear that Harry and Meghan are actually the ones getting burned by this. Because what this book does is it dredges up all these stories we already know. That Harry wasn't informed everything about the situation regarding his grandmother as she was dying. But all of us know basically at this point, well, of course they weren't telling you intimate details. They couldn't trust you with those intimate details anymore. And who cares that you had to rent a $30,000 jet? Don't you do that all the time? You love flying privately. Why would it be such a struggle for you to get a private jet up to Scotland? And then there's other strange things like telling us that, well, Netflix decided to release the trailer for Harry and Meghan on the day of the Earthshot Prize in 2022. And I was like, well, of course they would. They're a soulless corporation. They want to milk Harry and Meghan for all they're worth. They don't care that Harry and Meghan may be, even though I don't think they were, trying to salvage any sort of family relationships that they can. That was not part of their agenda. So what does this all tell us at the end of the day? Well, that Omid really doesn't have anything to offer because he doesn't really have any access. But of course he's promoting this up the wazoo. His publisher is as well. But the reviews have come in, and most of them are not flattering to him in the slightest. Let me share with you some of the wonderful tidbits we got from some of these interviews, because they are nice. They are nice. The Evening Standard says, on a scale of royal revelations where Princess Diana's ones to Andrew Morton were a 10, this one would scrape a 1.5. And also says, for a royal correspondent, he is weirdly uninformed about the basics. So he makes the usual mistake of giving someone a title plus both Christian name and surname. If he'd ever worked on Londoner's Diary, he'd know this is only done with the sons of dukes and marquises. He tells us that Charles was anointed head of the Church of England. Nope, he was anointed king. The ceremony predates the Reformation. All small stuff, but it makes him look clueless. And it concludes, if they should go under, it must be a comfort to know that Omid Scobie will be there to chart their downfall in deathless prose. And the Telegraph says, hell hath no fury like a royal reporter scorned. Omid Scobie's endgame is billed as the real story of what has been going on inside the palace walls. What runs through its 400 pages is Scobie's sense of burning indignation that he was shut out. And it goes on to say, the hero of the tale isn't Meghan as it was in Finding Freedom, but Scobie himself. He zips around like a character from the morning show, informing us of his outfit choices, preparations for Queen Elizabeth's death, demanded a simple black sweater from M&S, and his work for ABC News. He considers himself a wise counsel to palace staffers and can't believe they ignore his advice. There is a hilarious scene in which he is filmed outside the gates of Kensington Palace and comes face to face with William driving out. Standing inches from the front end of his Range Rover, there were virtually eye to eye. William, he says, gave him an unimpressed stare. And it ends with, Endgame is an utterly one-sided affair. But royal biographers these days like to pick a side. This book is no more biased than revenge. I would disagree with that. Tom Bower's takedown of Meghan. Scobie knows his audience and they will lap it up. The Times says this is basically Finding Freedom, the sequel. It's not so much an incisive look at why he thinks the monarchy is doomed, more a mishmash of ancient history, aging stories, and a bit of new stuff. Some of it interesting. The monarchy might face questions about its future, but Scobie doesn't have many answers. Mostly he offers random thoughts, wild generalizations, and score settling. It's a shame because the royal family obviously isn't perfect. Its members are, I expect, as fallible, ruthless, and occasionally unkind as anyone else. Harry and Meghan, for example. The existence and future of the monarchy is a debate like any other, worth having as long as we disagree agreeably. Scobie doesn't debate, he berates. And by the way, the sweater came from M&S and he got to the TV studio on the tube. That's 22 pounds I've just saved for you. Oh, that is good. That is good. That is really good. That is unbelievably good. So they begin the review by talking about how he went through this whole diatribe, apparently, about how he needed to get a black sweater for when it was announced that the Queen had died, and he had done all these things because if you're picking up on a theme here, which I hope you are, this book isn't really about Harry and Meghan as much as it is about maybe Omid Scobie. And here we have the New York Times. Early on in Endgame, the journalist and royal commentator Omid Scobie makes an enticing promise. In the past, I, like others, have held back on revealing some of the darker truths at the heart institution of the British monarchy, he writes. Part of this book will burn my bridges for good, but to tell you the full story, there's no holding back. Not anymore. We're in the end game. However, readers hoping for a final death blow of gossip will be disappointed. We've heard much of this before, from Fergie, from Diana, from Charles, from Harry, from Harry again. Whether or not Scobie actively collaborated with Harry and Meghan for this book, he does them no favors. Their chapter reads like a press release cooked up by ChatGPT and does little to shed light on them as humans. He says the couple who used to focus on coverage of themselves now remain blissfully unconcerned. Harry's next chapter will focus, among other things, on philanthropic efforts in the military space, while Meghan, and here Scobie quotes an unnamed source, is building something more accessible, something rooted in her love for details, curating, hosting, life's simple pleasures, and family. Of course, family she doesn't talk to. Scobie defines the term endgame as the final stages of a chess game after most of the pieces have been removed from the board. Unless Charles and his heirs act quickly, Scobie underscores they risk losing the crown, or at the very least, any remaining cultural relevance. But there's a paradox here. As long as people are buying books like Scobie's, they're buying the whole lousy operations. So looking at all that, none of those reviews are particularly flattering, and a lot of them call out Scobie for his obvious inconsistencies, lack of clarity, and obvious hypocrisy and lack of actual insight into the royalty. But you also pick up there is that this book is really about Omid. This is Omid's time to shine. He's no longer interested in pushing Harry and Meghan. Oh, no, no, no. He is interested in promoting himself, and he is willing to completely and utterly tarnish them in his wake. And when it comes to Harry and Meghan's relationship with the royal family, I think at this point it's pretty doomed, because what has been truly fascinating is the reveal that the Dutch edition of Endgame revealed that supposedly the royal racist who made a comment on Archie's skin tone that Meghan Markle alluded to in the Oprah Winfrey interview was Charles. It is very specific in its explanation, and it calls out Charles very specifically here. And looking at the Dutch publication, it is most likely that this was not a, I think, deliberate move. I think this was a mistake. They had been given an earlier draft that included Charles's name. And why is this so important? It's so important because it utterly and completely irrevocably damages, once again, Harry and Meghan's relationship with the royal family, because that news, that piece of information could have only come from Omid Scobie. Why? Because Harry and Meghan have made him their cheerleader. They have made him into what he is. And the whole world, or anybody who's watching closely, knows that Omid Scobie is there just to support Harry and Meghan. The only people that potentially benefits revealing is it benefits perhaps Harry and Meghan. And because of that, it is a catastrophic train wreck for the Sussexes and any hope they had of mending their relationship with the royal family. And many people are thinking, well, aren't they past this? They don't care anymore. They want to move on from the royals. But I don't think that's true, because I don't think Harry and Meghan right now are doing all that hot. Their deals I think are going to start to expire, and they seem to have no real plan. And a statement, an exclusive statement to People magazine recently confirms this, because it's written so oddly, I don't even quite understand what they're trying to say. But I think it's clear that as this book is once again hitting them and all their fractious relationship with the royals and so many other people, it's once again showing that Harry and Meghan are problematic elements. They are the issue. They're the ones who gave this guy a platform. They're the ones who fed him. And now he is turning on them in some ways. Or he at least is going, you know what? Screw you guys. I want those Chanel skis that apparently he does or does not have. Apparently he rides a Burton snowboard, according to Omid. And he also, we found out from the Times, has flown on at least one private jet between LA and Palm Springs, because now he's sort of based in LA. So he is clearly gunning for what Harry and Meghan are. They have transformed him into a reflection of themselves. He has maybe moved or thinking of moving from London to LA to perhaps pursue his own Hollywood dreams. Very interesting. So here is what it says. And this is from People magazine. And People magazine, just as a reminder, is basically a celebrity exclusive publication. Celebrities go to People magazine all the time to share their information. It's basically a PR puff piece is what People magazine is. And it says, what we're seeing, and we'll see more of, I think, is Hagen, guys, mashing Harry and Meghan's names together like it's 2003, which, you know, they're like 20 years behind this trend. So that does not bode well on the face of it. 2.0 part 2. They know of their supposed failures and how it's viewed, but they have almost gone more tech than Hollywood. Now, when I heard that, I was like, what? What do you mean you've gone more tech than Hollywood? He has connection to, whatchamacallit, Better Up. And they've done this thing where they're trying to make social media better by lecturing and nagging multi-billion-dollar corporations who are doing a heck of a lot better than Harry and Meghan, by the way. So that is what they are doing, apparently. But they're not doing Hollywood, which is what they're being paid to do, which is so incredibly stupid. Your biggest paydays came from Hollywood, you numbskulls. You need to work there. Why are you working in big tech allegedly, barely, if your real goal is supposedly Hollywood and that's where you're getting your money. That's what the deals you signed. It's so ridiculous too, because you see Omid and other people say, well, they were just so desperate for cash. And it's like, what, that $20 million in Harry's bank account wasn't going to help them? That they needed to jump onto all these deals that they were not prepared for? Or the smarter way to look at it is, the two numbskulls initiated Mexit with no stinking plan. And wouldn't you know it, that backfired on them, because the monarchy's like, yeah, that's nice, but we're going to move on. We don't need to placate you, which Harry and Meghan were banking on, which is what wrecked, I think, some of their Mexit plans. But the statement goes on and it gets even more ridiculous. It says, fail big and all that. So this ends after they've gotten more tech than Hollywood. Fail big. So your guys' plan was to fail? Was it to fail so you could go back to the royal family? That doesn't even make sense. Like, so your whole plans are to constantly fail? I mean, I guess bravo, you've achieved that, but if you continue to failing, people aren't going to pay you guys anymore. You're going to start run out of money pretty quickly if you can't do anything. A source tells People they have swapped in and out all sorts of projects and people and are embarking on a total system reboot, which is a huge problem. You're only 4 years into this, not even. Mexit was initiated in January of 2020. You're telling me that by December 2023, although this is November, but it's almost December 2023, that you're having to restructure your entire operation, hire new people, fire people, and all this stuff because you guys don't know what you're doing? That does not sound like an operation I want to be part of. I don't think anybody else either. And if I'm a business prospect, I don't want to look at two people who have clearly no clue what they're doing and associate with somebody like Omid Scobie and watching all of this just collapse around them. And then it goes on to say, they have a constitutional inability to look in the rear view. What does that mean? That's not a phrase. Constitutional inability? What? I've never heard that phrase used ever. And what this signifies too is that they still think they're royals. That this signifies, using the word constitution connects them to the American government, the UK government. It's like, you guys have no constitutional relevancy whatsoever. Why are you talking about constitution? And says, why should they? They're all about the future. Well, I think Harry and Meghan should have focused a little bit more on the past as well and done a bit better with who they associate with. The fallout of Endgame, their disastrous plays in Hollywood right now, can all be laid at the feet somewhat of Omid Scobie. And these latest revelations once again do them no favors and just highlight that they gave a platform to somebody who is entirely in it for their own gain and is fully willing to do whatever it takes to get a bit of attention. And wouldn't you know it, doesn't that sound an awful lot like Meghan Markle? Omid Scobie, I guess, is the journalistic version of Meghan Markle. And at the end of the day, Meghan Markle has burned herself, and I think so has Omid Scobie. But maybe he'll be laughing all the way to the bank, or maybe he'll find himself struggling to get his next role, and his private jet flights may have dissipated if this book particularly bombs. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.